Okay, let me call this subcommittee on enrollment to order. We'll take up one action item for approval. Action item 1A is the approval of the minutes of September 26, 2023 meeting. I'd like to move the approval of action item 1A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll now vote. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? That item is approved. With no other action items on the agenda, we can move to our information items. For today's meeting, Vice Chancellor Sarmiento, supported by Colin Shellman, Senior University Dean for Applied Research, Evaluation, and Data Analytics, will provide updated enrollment data, including application conversions and the success of CUNY Reconnect 2.0. Other topics include impacts of FAFSA delays and our action plans to address them.
That one. Renee? Yes.
Like,
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening. So the first thing I want to be able to do is give you the promising results of spring 24 enrollment. That was as of February 26, and the top number is the total head count. So you'll see that it's 2.6% higher. To date, we're actually at 2.8, so it's a little higher. On the left hand of the column, there are the undergrad total enrollment is there. It's up by 3%. And our first-time freshman is up by 7.8. To date, that's actually up 8.9%. Very promising. And then the transfer remains the same at 7.9. On the right-hand side, you'll see the total enrollment for graduate, which is about flat. But that you also see promising results in the grad enrollment up by 16.1, and that's virtually the same from today as opposed to the 26. Right, so in order to, there's one way of looking at enrollment from the number of people head counts, and then there are data on how the students enroll in terms of full-time attendance, taking 12 or more credits. So you'll see overall that it's up by 3.3%. And again, in the freshman population, more students are going to school full-time. Transfer is up, and same with graduates. Any questions on enrollment? That's kind of a very high level, but shows promising results.
just one thing.
Sure.
And it's not to throw rain on anybody's parade.
Yep.
It also is, we're operating from a post-pandemic baseline.
Okay, yes.
And we at the same point, would love to understand, and I said, we don't have to, it can be in very small print, but where we were in 2020 and or 19. And that just gives us it becomes two stories. It is where we were and where we're trying to get back to. And that's the only reason I'd suggest that, not to try and, as I said, I'm encouraged by the progress forward and the things that have been done in enrollment. It's just, it tells it also is a story as we're telling, and as you're also looking for funds along the way, it helps to tell both stories, and it really is, it is a pre and post pandemic, because that is the intervening factor in that, and allows you to tell a slightly different story. So
we can get you that. The one thing I want to point out that Renee didn't mention, because over the 4 years they were smaller classes, the combined total remains smaller, right? So you're saying 2.6%, which doesn't sound like a great deal.
oh, that is good.
The percentage you should be paying the most attention to is the freshman enrollment, because those will every year then expand.
Well, and also, I mean, just to be able to tell a even fuller picture, New York City Public Schools, which is where we get a prime number of our students, their enrollment's down. What is it, I mean, as they said, and that tells a different, that creates additional reasons for. I just think all of that is helpful in painting a fuller picture for all of us, that's all.
And just to show, in some of the data that Renee and the office sends internally, we actually have the versus last year, but then we add a category that goes back to that to remind everybody of the road that we still have
Correct.
to get ahead.
Excellent.
So can I add, from 2 years ago, we've increased overall enrollment by about 0.5%, to your point. So that's from 2 springs ago.
Am I reading this, I'm sorry,
Absolutely, go ahead, Andrew.
am I reading this wrong? I thought that I could be totally off on this, that we were around 220,000 students.
231.
So this is spring enrollment. That number is higher in the fall because those are larger numbers that replace. So the fall number, Colin, is traditionally higher than the spring number,
Oh, my.
in
What
terms
is
of
the difference
enrollment.
between the spring number and the fall number? How many students have we less now than we had then?
That's a magnitude of 4 or 5. It's much larger in the fall.
And normally probably you remember, because whenever we give data formally, right, we give fall data. We're giving you spring data here because it's a semester where we are, right? So normally when we report, when you see all the documents officially, it's normally fall data, and that's why the 231 probably sticks to your
Yeah,
mind.
I always thought it was 220, to be honest with you, but 231 sounds better.
Any day.
John?
I remember 274, so that's my high water mark. But so the one number I can't back out of this that I think also suffered during the pandemic was fall to spring retention, measured, say, by first-time freshmen. And I know at CSI, when I looked at the numbers, there was a 10% drop in the retention number, and I can't see it here. I see everything going up by much more than the average, and so something went down. It's not being reported here, and I'm curious if our retention numbers are getting back to where they were, or however you want to measure that, but let's just say full-time, first-time freshmen from fall to spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think Colin is quickly trying to get his fingers on it. I will tell you, we've looked at that very specifically to try and identify where the decline in enrollment is. Is it, is there a retention problem? Is there a bodies coming in problem? And overwhelmingly, last year, the conclusion was, no, it's people not enrolling as opposed to big swings in retention. But Colin would have the specifics. We can certainly provide that.
Our overall one-year retention rates have gone up by 2 percentage points year over year, from those entering in fall 2021 to fall 2022. We don't yet have the most recent fall 2023 data because of the 12/6 school calendar, but we'll have that soon.
Any other questions?
Okay, the next slide, wait a minute. Wrong slides. Okay, so this talks about the number of unique applications, and I say unique because every one student could apply to up to 6 institutions, right? So you'll see the difference there. Remember, I think there was a news article that started out at 386% increase. Well, that has now gone to 9, which is still significantly higher. And I want to be able to remind the board that this particular number is high, and the purpose of the fee waiver and the welcome to be able to increase applications so that students could act sooner, right? And we could get the responses of those applications out sooner. The colleges have started their conversion activities much earlier, where before they'd start right around February responding to students. An overwhelming amount of the applications that were in November all had their notifications. They knew where they were accepted, and we have at least 2 colleges that I know of starting registration as early as March. And that is really unheard of. And what they wanted to do was to capitalize on the fact that these students have been accepted and if they were ready to go, to be able to help accept them, register them, and then work with them through the summer in summer programs.
We probably in the future, probably should not put out numbers that talk about, was it 368% increase? Because once it gets drilled down to 9, and I understand what we were trying, it's not a great look. 9 is good. And I understand we're trying to build enthusiasm, but
Well, but it's also not apples to apples. I mean, that number was of the applicants at that same period. That's what we're
Correct.
measuring there. This is unique applicants, which we
It's
couldn't tell
everybody.
back then. So-
Yeah, yeah. And I'll also say that SUNY's right around where we are.
really,
Yeah.
darn.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they had,
Oh, that's
they had
good.
this big surge, right? But it's all catching up, right? And the purpose of the initiatives was to be able to act earlier. So, yeah.
To maximize the yield of that 9% increase.
From the, I'm going to say free applications that were given out to the public and the parochial schools, what is the percentage of those applicants that were accepted into CUNY?
Do you have that on dashboard, the accepted rate?
Oh, so that would be for the senior colleges only, though. Oh, I know off the top of my head, I'm sorry. It's it's about 60 to 70% acceptance rate on average across our senior colleges, including comprehensives.
For parochial schools and private schools?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what he asked.
Boy, I'm sorry. No, I do not know that one. I would have to look that one up.
Okay.
But Angela, we do have an increase in private school applications. Yeah.
The percentage was actually higher for that period of time for non-DOE schools. So we touched base with the charters, the Catholics, yeshivas, and all of the schools in New York City. I mean, outside of New York City as well. So I think what we need to be able to do is, and part of the assessment of this is to really kind of look at conversion of where we got the additional students, whether they were an increase of the DOE, despite the fact that the numbers are getting lower, as opposed to the other populations we're trying to serve.
Yeah, my question really was the percentage of students that were accepted out of the entire context of parochial and other schools that were given a free application.
Well,
Just to get a sense of, you know, I mean, I'm sure it was helpful, but I was wondering how helpful was it?
we'll definitely get that.
A lot of public schools, it said 60 to 70% were accepted from the public schools.
No, well, he wasn't sure of that.
No, he
Yeah,
was
it's
a
for
public
No, that's
schools.
for
he's
all-
sure.
that's for
He
all
just doesn't
schools.
know.
Exactly.
For all students,
Yeah, so-
it's 60 to 70% acceptance rate. Renee, just to applaud her efforts, her team has been all over the private schools and the religious schools. We have made a significant effort to reach them. She's really done a great job. And we've seen a significant increase in private applications. We just apparently don't have that number, but we can get that for you.
Well, I'm very pleased with that because a lot of the youngsters that go to parochial schools are ones that can't afford to go to private colleges outside of CUNY. So I
In fact, I was
compliment.
gonna thank you, because
No,
I know
not
you
me.
brought that up several times, and that
Chancellor.
really has triggered a significant outreach effort above and beyond what we did before.
Yeah, well, I'm delighted.
I also think that because we want to make a commitment to this effort, we do have an MOU that has been blessed by OGC, right? To be able to work with the different schools to set up College Now programs and to do bridge work.
Great,
Are independent schools like, I visited a school,
great. I mean, to be able to do college now,
With
with a
yeshivas
lot of the
and
private
some
program
Catholic
schools, that
schools,
is,
yes.
that is
Yes,
excellent. That's great.
all new.
I visited an independent school in Harlem on 106th Street called Cristo Rey. And they have an outstanding program. Was that part of this outreach? They're just incredible place.
I could,
So impressed with that school.
I mean, I think Cristo Rey historically has had ties to CUNY, because I just know a little bit of the history of the school.
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, we'll have to drill down more in the numbers to see more specifics, but I think that they have worked with some of our schools in the past.
They have a great program.
Yeah.
They, you know, 4 days, just to,
Just
4
to
days, I'm
temper,
sorry.
temper your expectations, I think it's important. It is difficult to have these agreements with state resources and religious schools. And so it's been, I mean, we've been making these, been attempting to make these College Now arrangements for a while now, but it's been very tricky legally to ensure that we're not crossing state boundaries about taxpayer money toward religious schools. So just so you know, this has been an effort that's been ongoing for quite some time, but it's challenging in terms of the legal arrangements.
The key is that we're trying.
We are absolutely trying.
Not only are we trying, but they're also reaching out.
Yeah.
Because they also know that their students may have to stay in New York and they want choices for a quality education, so.
Yes.
I just want to add, it's an N of one, but it's a great story. My son is a sophomore at a Catholic high school, and he came home one day when there was this big marketing campaign. He said, "Mom, what's going on at CUNY?" I said, "Why?" He goes, "It's like the coolest place in the world all of a sudden." He's like, "It's all over social media. He's like, all my friends are talking about it." And he's like, "You guys are doing a good job." I said, "Oh, thanks." So it's hitting the kids. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Not to give a particular plug for Cristo Rey, but I was so impressed because kids there are outstanding. They go to school 4 days a week, they go to work 1 day a week, and whatever money they make, they're placed in at different companies, and whatever money they make goes back to paying their tuition. Doesn't pay for their tuition, really. Tuition's a lot more than what they make, but I just thought it was an outstanding program.
Yeah, I think at the next meeting, we could just do a deep dive on all of our conversion rates on all non-DOE schools. I think that might be a good thing. This slide is just to talk about the conversion several weeks ago and the amount of commitment fees that are paid. The number of waived commitment fees are high simply because of the need. But they still choose, right? They just don't pay the fee, but they have chosen to commit. So I want to be able to outline that as well. We talked a little bit about this. The memo of understanding is for not only the non-DOE schools, but we're also working with the DOE to consolidate all of our MOUs. The pricing structure, as Wendy talked about, still needs to be able to be worked out, but the template is there, and so far Staten Island and Brooklyn are using it to make inroads. This is the breakdown. At last count, that was 9,524. We are now at 15,241, so that's significantly higher. I just want to be able to highlight a few things. 91% of these adult students are in the borough. Over 75% are over 24. 66% are Black or Hispanic. 493 of these students have already graduated. And the top major for these students is STEM. So that's pretty significant. STEM.
Yep.
The second one is health professions, right? So I think that this, and the retention rate from semester to semester for this cohort is 55%. So the only thing that is noticeable and that we knew was that these students don't all go full-time. They have jobs, right? But the point is they're back in school. They're capitalizing on the resources of the colleges, and that we're lending support to bring them back to school.
So I have a question about the ratio. So we recently saw that first-time freshmen are about 60-40 choosing senior colleges, and here community college is the choice for this group of students? Is there some story that explains that? Is it mostly, like I could see the healthcare profession being a community college draw, but the STEM field maybe not. So I'm not sure how to read that
So
preference difference.
the difference between cohort 1 and cohort 2 is cohort 1, the colleges reached out to all of their students who stopped out. It was a very targeted CUNY campaign. For cohort 2, it's everybody. It's everybody who stopped. So we have the technology now that could geo-map an area and say, here are all the students that are over 24 who are thinking about going back to college. And those are the numbers that you're seeing. It's more diffuse in terms of the distribution because we're reaching out to everybody.
But
Non-Q.
that doesn't answer why community colleges has the highest
I mean,
enrollment versus senior or comprehensive, right? Isn't that what this data said?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, is there something particular about the draw for community colleges with this cohort that doesn't seem to apply to our traditional first-time freshmen?
I could tell you anecdotally that the community colleges have a better forgiveness program.
well, and I think also historically, older students and students who come part-time do tend to attend more community colleges. I mean, they see themselves more in those programs. So if that's a larger part of this cohort too, it wouldn't be inconsistent with that, that they're going to the place that historically has provided, that flexibility. So that could be part of the equation too.
Part of Reconnect is helping the person contacted identify the right fit for them. That's a different model than folks who apply to whatever school interests them. And so my guess is we're directing them more toward where there are heavier services for students who are rematriculating.
So I think nationally, everybody knows about the FAFSA delay, so I just want to be able to start off with some good news. It is supposed to be shorter.
Let's give the bad news first.
I know, right. The application is shorter. Of the students are saying that they're spending on an average of 10 minutes as opposed to a very long amount of time for those additional questions. There's been a pretty big social blitz on it, and the one thing that I really like about the FAFSA delay that CUNY has done is we have the net price calculator. And that net price calculator, in a sentence, is before you apply for aid, put all your information in, and we'll give you a good idea of what you're eligible for. Now, that has helped tremendously when it comes to students who are wondering when they're going to get an award letter and preventing them from possibly making a choice to commit to a college.
And it's new. This is part of our enrollment strategy. This is a new service.
So the bad news is that there's been delays in getting it out. And even when it did get released in January, there was a host of issues. There are also issues currently that are still outstanding. For instance, a student without a social security number cannot apply yet. And we're waiting for guidance from the Department of Ed. And so the delay is March 15th. But even then, they put up a subsequent memo about a week ago that says they're coming on the 15th, but they're going to come in slowly. We're going to send out a little. We're going to take down the system. Then we're going to do it again. And so that indicates that it will be a rocky road even to this date, right? And so the DOE has, the Department of Ed has said, be flexible with your deadlines, right? And as a result of that, we announced that our decision day would move from May 1 to June 1, right? The tentative dates here are that between the 8th and the 16th, students will start to slowly get their award letters. But even then, it may be slower than we think if they're just going to kind of slowly roll them out, right? This is the net price calculator. And what I like about this particular feature is that it is programmed for the new FAFSA, right? And when we looked at the number of hits on there, it launched on February 5th. There are 85,000 people who have hit that site and wanted to know what they're eligible for financial aid. So that is a tremendous, tremendous number. In fact, that pales to the number of TAP applications that we have. So that kind of gives you an idea of the power of this, that it mirrors the new FAFSA, and that families could hopefully make decisions about where they want to go. This is the revised award letter, and what it does is it breaks down a little bit more clearly and succinctly what a family's eligible for. In the past, it was very, it just said the names of what they were eligible for with no background. And so this is part of the transparency initiative that we're making sure that all of our award letters are easy to read and that there are resources available. So at this point, what are we doing with the fact that it may be delayed is we're about to put a proposal together to give to the chancellor to open up financial aid centers throughout all of New York City, all through the summer, partnering with the Department of NYCPS, as well as the New York libraries. We're all seeing a need for students to be able to complete the FAFSA and the TAP application. And this initiative will be open to all students regardless of wherever they go, because the campuses are quite concerned that the applications for TAP and FAFSA are going to be low even with the rollout. And then I guess there were questions about the top 10%. And it is for fall 25, but we need to be able to understand how that works this summer, no later than this summer, because of the configuration necessary to be able to identify the top 10%. So we're working with the governor's office, and SUNY is also waiting for guidance as to how this will work to identify the top 10%. And if you're wondering why we're looking for guidance, the New York City Public School doesn't rank, and neither does some of the other schools. So is it top 10% overall for the graduating class of New York State? Is it per high school? Those are all kind of questions that SUNY and CUNY has to be able to answer those questions. But what I can say is every senior college has said they want to sign on to the top 10% and be active in that. So I guess there's really not a lot to talk about there, only that we have a lot of questions that the governor's office is going to have to answer. Okay, yes?
Do we have a sense of what percentage of the top 10% defined suitably actually come to CUNY currently, so we can see if there's a change in after the new policy?
We can get that number for you. I don't have it right at hand. Yes.
I could tell you that the senior colleges, when I talked to them about participating, they said, Renee, we don't get that many, but when we do, they're Macaulay's. And they're part of their own scholar programs. So each campus has something that mirrors Macaulay in their own way. And those are the students that are attracted, and those come with full scholarships.
If I may, since I have also President Schrader here, I was able this morning to visit with Chancellor Banks, Richmond Hill High School, really to talk about our collaborative work on Future Ready, which is the New York City Public Schools version of partnership with us in having their high school students more career ready and, have that and take a lot more college level credits and courses so that, they accelerate their time and the retention and all the benefits from that comes when they come to us at CUNY. It was great to see how those partnerships with the New York City Public Schools pay off in all the different ways that we're saying is important here. All of the students who were there participating, who were part of the program, had filled out their FAFSA, right? Because they're students that we're messaging them, we're supporting them when they do. It was phenomenal to see the praise for the team at your college. They have 17 College Now areas and courses connected with Richmond Hill. They have 6 professional clusters. York was the lead partner in 2 of them. We were there with your provost and your dean of the School of Health Sciences. So they're creating programming, and Richmond Hill is one of the main feeder schools to York. So to see that synergy of that work with the New York City Public Schools, it is really paying off in all the work that we've been doing on the enrollment side, the work with the faculty in creating curriculum that generates college-level credits for those students. So it was one of those visits in which you see many pieces of the investments that we have made paying out, even at a time when the FAFSA delay, right, works against all those efforts. But again, I just want to, give kudos to your team, President Schrader there because they were president at York, and clearly from the school, the gratitude in terms of the partnership and the support was very evident, and the work with the K-16-12 team. So,
Yeah, I can't emphasize how important programs like College Now and early college programs are, because the bridge doesn't come at the end. The bridge exists, like at least from junior high school. And so that relationship is there. Students understand what it takes to get in to CUNY, and then more importantly, they have the support to do so as well. So I think that's part of the reason why it's so successful, that we have such a great partnership.
Are there AP programs available, courses available across the high schools in New York City that CUNY accepts?
What you should do, and I guess you describe College Now briefly, because that is part of some of that. I mean, and not just College Now
Early college.
is one initiative, and then others, so you may want to go into that, and then how that feeds in, and then also just kind of AP classes.
So there are different strands of College Now, but essentially students have an opportunity to take College Now credits, so college credit, whether it be at the high school or on the campus, that could transfer to the senior college. I think on average, College Now students can accumulate as high as 12 credits to 15 credits before they even get to the campuses.
And by the way, how many students do you have in College Now these days?
I believe it's like 50,000.
50,000.
It's pretty significant. It's all in all high schools. It is a joint program with the DOE. They're very invested. The other early college program is early college, where they're taking classes for high school credit and for college credit during the day. And so that is also popular. And what the chancellor just talked about was Future Ready, which focuses students on particular meta majors so that they're ready for classes once they hit the colleges. So President Schrader talked about the deep relationships. It goes as early as 9th grade to get them to tours, to work with them in the creative arts field, to even tutoring math and reading. And then when they are close to graduating, we have a pretty extensive bridge program to bridge what is an arduous task for counselors, which is to get all of their students ready for college. We have bridge coaches we hire college students to be able to go into their high schools to be able to help them with college applications. So the K-16 initiative is a pretty 360 view of how we prepare students for post-secondary education.
And we could do a deeper dive on that.
Absolutely.
The subcommittee, because we have tons of really great data on that, so.
I think that's an outstanding program. Not to go back to the parochial schools, but I know Regis High School here in the city as a program starts with youngsters as much as being in the 6th grade.
Wow.
And they take them over the summer, and they tutor them so that they're ready at some point just to go to Regis, which is
Yeah.
not to knock any.
Regis is
I'm a public school guy, but probably one of the best high schools in the country. So, but that's a great program. I commend you. It's a great program.
Just
And then,
Just two quick comments. I'm really happy to hear about the setting up help with the FAFSA. As a parent who's recently done it, I have to say, those students who've done it in 10 minutes, they beat me because it's an arduous task. It's the form itself that you have to keep going back to everything. So, second, I'm really thrilled about the top 10%. And I'll tell you why. I think there are so many incredibly smart and talented kids in our schools, public schools, and I don't think that we get even, I would like to know what percentage. And I'm sometimes wondering if it has to do, I think for that specific group, we might want to tweak the language or improve the language when we go to schools, because I've been in my kids' school, which was a special gifted and talented school when they were receiving CUNY representatives giving talks. And the emphasis was on the size of CUNY and just sort of in general, like it's the biggest university, has this, but the one thing that I thought wasn't there was the quality. And these kids want to hear the quality of instruction, like you will access to top professors, excellent minds, I think the language for that specific group, because it's been my view, just as a parent going back and forth and asking parents, what's happening, I think that that language might need to present it in a different way, because it's a totally different group of students. They're very ambitious and they're really, they're ready. And many of the parents nowadays would want to come and stay. Their kids should stay in the city. So, those are great initiatives. So, thank you.
And thank you for the feedback. And that feedback, if you go back and look at the two campaigns, the campaign that we used for this year, the first one last year, we focused on affordability, and part because of feedback like that, the Degree for Every Dream had a lot more on the quality of the programs to be able to capture some of those things. So thank you for that great feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
John?
Turning to college now, I've been thinking about the presentation that accompanied the SAT policy of extending test neutral, and part of it was this graph of where freshmen are choosing to go, be it community colleges or senior colleges. And since 2016, there's been a big change there. And I'm curious if College Now students who have accumulated significant credits choose senior colleges at an even higher rate than, I think it's like 60-40 right now, and what that means for community college enrollments moving forward.
We can get that info.
Yeah, I think the next presentation should really focus on college
Just
now
now, we
and
can do it
K-16
down that
initiatives.
same info.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, I did look up the top 10%. Probably our biggest opportunity is the 19 to 20% of the top 10% who go to SUNY campuses, who are probably our most direct competition. A lot of the others end up going to selective colleges, very selective colleges.
Okay. That's, Renee, again, thank you.
Thank you.
For your presentation. Your team continues to impress, so really want to say thanks again.
Thank you for the support.
Not at all. Job well done. Excellent. Our second presenter is Vice Chancellor of Academic and Faculty Affairs, Alicia Alvaro, who will recap the progress made in collaboration with faculty during phases 1 and 2 of the transfer initiative, including recommendations for system-wide reforms. Vice Chancellor Alvaro will also brief us on the program alignment work that comprises the third phase of the transfer initiative, which began this spring.
Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Alvaro, and I'm going to apologize in advance. The slides are a draft version. I'm not sure what version this is, but join me as we're surprised slide to slide as I update you on the
Same here.
It'll be fun. And I do also want to thank Luby Alatriste. She was my partner in crime with the transfer initiative, and it was a fantastic opportunity to partner with the UFS on this, so I'm glad to have her here, because she can help answer any questions maybe that we might have.
Sure.
All right, so
Thank you.
point this, here we go. So what I'd like to do is just try to set a context for all of the existing work that happens within CUNY with transfer and this specific transfer initiative and where it all fits in. We've had a lot of work through our academic momentum campaigns. Specifically, there was one predates me and CUNY Central, but the Academic Momentum Campaign 2.0, which really tried to encourage transfer, articulation agreements across the system, and that work continues to happen. The colleges continue to collaborate, continue to work, strengthen relationships. We developed a tool, Transfer Explorer. I have a few little snippets from it, I hope, on this slide deck. But then the system-wide reforms is really the work that we've been doing as part of this initiative. The policy and practice work, and then the program alignment, which is what I co-chaired with Luby. So high-level overview of the type of work we're doing. In really evaluating transfer and what is going on within transfer. It's not that the 60 credits taken at a community college do not transfer. The student takes all 60 credits, and they do transfer to the senior college. The challenge is within the major. So if I major in, let's say, psychology and earn 21 credits, 18 credits at a community college, and that same major is 36 credits at a senior college, sometimes only 12 of those psychology credits are applied to the psychology major. So essentially, I have to retake or take more psychology credit to major in that same area as a native student would. And that's really the main issue that we needed to try and target. So all 60 credits are transferring, but the students in the community college have to take more credits within their major because they weren't transferring over. And so we took a really deep dive into this, and so I'll explain a little bit about the curriculum piece in a minute, but we also started to realize there's some gaps in our policies that are not supporting seamless transfer for students. For example, I'm at a community college taking courses, planning to be a psychology major at a senior college, and I keep looking at, let's say, Transfer Explorer that shows me how my credits are going to transfer. And I decide I'm going to take this course and this course and this course. By the time I graduate and I start the senior college, those equivalencies could have changed. So I planned my 2 years at the community college, and all of a sudden the course has changed. So we don't have a policy in place that says whatever those course equivalencies are when you are planning and you're at a community college, they remain in effect. So they come with you to the senior college. So we're identifying issues and things as we're going through this and trying to make sure that we holistically tackle transfer student success. Within practice, this is actually one of my favorite pieces and becoming my favorite piece because we're really identifying some really impactful practices. For example, CUNY credit evaluation batch processing. You might be mortified to learn this, but if I am a community college student and I transfer to a four-year school, I am accepted, and I say I am going to attend Queens College, because that's where I'm from, right? So Queens College. I look on CUNY First, and all my courses still show their Queensborough Community College numbers. They don't translate to Queens College. And sometimes I'm asked to register for courses at Queens College, still not knowing, well, what are these courses? What do they look like at Queens? Because a person has to manually click a button in order for the students to see this. We identified that there is a way to do this at batch, do it automatically for all students. So if a student applies to Queens College, 300 students apply to Queens College, the moment they're all accepted, they can go to CUNY First and see how all of their credits transfer. My dream would be that this would happen pre-admission. So I apply to Queens College and Hunter College, and then I can go to CUNY First and see how my credits transfer, so I can make a decision. But one step at a time. We've been working really closely with Seb Formosa and his team in CIS. He's really excited about this, and I think that this is going to come to fruition very soon. So that will be transformative for students to be able to see what those courses look like. And so I am really excited about that. We also have many advancements in Transfer Explorer, a fantastic tool that shows how the credits transfer. We have built out amazing features, which I'll show you in a second, one of which a student at a community college can indicate where I hope to transfer. So those are your transfer plans. Right now, that information is just there in Transfer Explorer, and somebody at a senior college has to go in and extract this information. We're also working with CIS to get that information into CUNY First, into EAB Navigate, so advisors can see that, the senior colleges can see that, they can schedule, plan, they can anticipate who is coming. They can proactively reach out to those students and say, hey, come to Queens College event, and I keep saying Queens just out of habit, come to Hunter, come to, because they know that these students are hoping to transfer to that. So how do we get that useful information into many different platforms? So these practices are going to be really impactful and a big part of the transfer initiative that we're very excited about. Let's see. Okay, so this is just a recap of the top transfer majors that we looked at back in, oh my goodness, a year ago, I think. And so business, computer science, education, psychology, accounting, and engineering were the top ones, and they were selected for spring 23 alignment work. The liberal arts and sciences is the largest one. And what that means is a student majors in liberal arts and then transfers to a specific major. And so this curriculum piece, what we've said is that we will guarantee seamless transfer of credit from same major to same major. And so liberal arts is not same major to same major. It's a different major to different major. However, all of the work that we're doing with the top majors, the majority of the liberal arts students actually go to psychology. So now, because of the great work that we've done with the alignment, we're reaching out to the schools that have liberal arts and saying, these are the courses, these are the competencies that we've developed that will align the curriculum. Can we provide students guidance with the right courses to take so that they increase the number of credits that transfer over?
Alicia, if I can just add super fast, there are underlying, as you can see, significant curricular work going on. If 30% of the liberal arts and sciences is a psychology major, and the community college doesn't have a psychology major, the question is, why is that? And how can we, really get students into the right places more quickly?
Yeah. And so I want to try and give a high-level summary of the competency approach to refresh your memory, and because it's something worth repeating before we go to the next slides. So how do we tackle this issue of the credits not transferring to the same major at the senior colleges? We realize that, sometimes I might teach my course, and in week 14 and 15 I cover this topic, and at the senior college they don't cover those topics. So therefore, the course can't be equivalent. But to the student, they're sitting there week after week thinking, I already took this course. And so could we get faculty to agree? We're not going to have a faculty member change the way they teach their course. So we took a step back. Said, could we get faculty to come together within each of these disciplines and agree what must a student learn in the first 2 years of the major? What's the information that they must learn? I might package it this way, you might package it this way, but can we agree that these are the critical competencies for them to learn in the first 2 years? And that is what we did. And Luby really helped a lot with that. We got the faculty together in these discipline groups. They came together and came up with these great lists of competencies. And then the following semester, in a little bit, we're still doing a little bit of that now, wrapping it up. We asked the community colleges, tell us which courses satisfy these competencies. Forget about, does it align, are the course-to-course, what are the courses that satisfy all these competencies? And we told them, we're aiming for about half of the major at the senior college. So if the senior college major is 36, we're aiming for 18 credits. they cannot take more than half the major at a community college because of residency requirements, right? You can't take 90% of the major and then only one course. So about half of the major, and that's what we were aiming for. And then we asked the senior colleges, if a student comes in from any community college having satisfied these competencies, what do they have left to take? Give us that list of courses. It may not be every single course available because we understand there's specializations and certain courses they might not be able to take, but tell us what that is. So essentially, a student can start at any community college, satisfy those core competencies, and know that they're going to start at the middle of the major at any senior college that they go to because they've satisfied these competencies. And that is the approach that we took, and we're very excited to say, really moved along very nicely. So I just want to give kind of a sample, very hypothetical, and I probably could update this now, Luby, with real information, but this is hypothetical information. So let's say we have all the community colleges or the colleges that offer an associate's degree. And if their major, and I chose my biology randomly, let's say at Queensborough it's 24 credits, Kingsborough it's 20 to 21 because it can be a range. But we said the number of credits that satisfy the core competencies is 19, because that's about half of what the major is at the senior colleges. The total number of majors, of credits in the major can stay the same, right? However, at some point, might students catch on and say, I only really need to take 19 credits, and I don't have to take, let's say, 28 credits. I don't need to take those extra credits to satisfy the major. That could happen, but some students will always need the major. Some students are not looking to transfer. So the major can always remain the major. But the number of credits that satisfy, so we can tell students, take these 19 credits, and when you transfer to senior college, you have 19 more to go, right? And so that would be an example of what they provide. This is what the bachelor's institutions would provide. So the total of credits of major in their course, maybe 40, 38, 42, which is why we chose 19 in this hypothetical example. And so then they tell us what are the number of credits that would remain. And so you could see the math on the side, right? If it's 40 credits minus 19, they'd only have 21. So in every instance, you can see that the student has about half of the major left. That's it. Versus instances right now where students might have 75, 80% left of the major to go because the credits are not counting towards their major. And so this would be the sample deliverable and then the list of all the courses so that we can kind of create these maps for these students so they know exactly what courses to take and then which courses they'd have remaining at the baccalaureate institution. Any questions about that before I start going on? Yes.
Who counsels the students? So they know,
Oh,
so they know that
Okay.
all they need to do is 19 credits to go into the four-year college versus if I want to take 38 and I'm losing those other 19, or that's all I want to take because I just want to go to the community college. So how do we get that message across to the students so they're not lost?
That's a great question, because we are always talking about making sure that the tools that we have reflect that information. The training we provide to the academic advisors reflects the same information. So we have to build out an academic advisement campaign, which we will be working on, but updating Transfer Explorer, which I keep bragging about, and I hope you love it as much as I do, which shows a visual depiction. It will show the students which courses they have to take. So we need to empower the students, we need to empower the academic advisors so that this information is easy to understand. It is absolutely critical. As a mother of 2 children who have tried to transfer, they tell me all the time how extremely lost they were, one within CUNY, one outside of CUNY, and so I get it. This needs to be easy to understand, easy to digest, and they need to be able to see this, but we will absolutely be
Great work.
working on it.
Really is.
Thank you. John? And then-
Laura, go first.
Laura, go ahead.
So if I remember correctly, and I probably, so in order for students to get all their CUNY core things waived, then they have to get an associate's degree?
Yes, but we
So-
have reverse transfer, and so what
Pardon?
we're talking about, we have reverse transfer available for that.
So I guess my question is there some other reason why students are forced to take the above 19 credits to get a major in order to get the associate so they can be waived from CUNY core? And if you could you stop that? I mean, so,
Yeah.
Okay.
You have hit the nail on the head,
Okay.
that's the issue, is why does a student, and there is a slide where I'll show you, in some instances, it's a major problem.
Yeah.
Where the number of credits, we have identified a major at a community college is 30 credits. It's a 30-credit major. That same major at the senior college is 33 credits.
yeah.
So I'll just add, you may wonder why that is possible, as do I. Interestingly, we went into this thinking that senior colleges were really the challenge in facilitating transfer. And what we found is it's often community colleges. What I heard from faculty is, I want to teach this course, that's why it's part of the major. And I said, that's fine, as long as students understand that that credit does not then transfer. So there's a lot of truth in advertising here that needs to happen. And I think when it becomes obvious and people recognize that they're spending money on credits that are not going to further their degree, it also then creates its own set of pressures to conform.
So if I recall, the wording of the board resolution was, after getting a degree, there's transfer with junior standing. So even in this hypothetical with 33, you could still have junior standing and graduate in 60 remaining credits at the senior college. So I do understand this problem that the community colleges have bigger majors than necessary, but what bothers me is this loophole that I didn't think existed, that a student could pick 19 credits, because that's not really the spirit of the competency. The competency is covered throughout the major, and because it's covered throughout the major, however suitably defined at the campus, not just select 19 credits, then that student is ready to finish with junior standing, and I'm not, I find this reverse associate degree a little troubling, because that's not present at the time of transfer, and I don't see why that would fall under the board resolution.
Well, it was about, when the competency approach, what we had the faculty do is, what do the students need to learn in the first 2 years? The first half of the major is how we explained it. And so what was I mean, the faculty agreed that this is what needs to be covered in the first half of the major. There are some community colleges that openly admit, and it's not everywhere, and it's, one department within a community college and a different department in a different community college, who admitted they're teaching advanced courses, 300-level courses. So those are not the competencies that were agreed upon. The competencies are what the student learn in the first half of the major. And so some community colleges are teaching above that. And
The faculty agreed. I mean, this is the thing. This is not us saying this.
Yeah.
The faculty at each of these community colleges said this is those competencies. So it's not that you're getting them in maybe you're getting more, but you're getting the initial 2-year exposure in these 19 credits.
I think the key is that actually the senior and junior college faculty were, as you know, John, they were all in the same room. I mean, for each discipline, they were there sitting at the table, and that's why it took so long, because they had to decide, this is the entire major, this is what we teach if we were just a 4-year college. And then, what do students need to satisfy in the first half? So they were sitting together deciding on this, and that's how they sort of, figured out what that half was.
My point is that the half is determined to be 19. But on some campuses, that's covered over 22 credits or 23, whatever the number is. To just pick 19 at the student level doesn't mean you satisfied all the competencies, because you might not pick the right 19. And that's why I have a problem with it.
They don't pick, no, actually what happens is
It's
they
not
have
course by
lists.
course, it's competencies embedded throughout the
No,
collection
no,
of
no.
courses.
But the senior colleges told us those 19 credits it satisfies, not a student. The faculty said they must take these 19 credits in order to say that they've satisfied those competencies. And so it's those 19 credits were determined by the faculty within the major. So a student can't get it wrong. Those credits were set by the.
But I think there was just some confusion in the way that you worded the student gets to pick the 19. I think that's
right, I'm sorry.
that's I think what
That's right.
triggered
No, they don't get it.
John, because
They don't
I had a same, no,
No,
it said.
no.
But we don't even have 19 credits if you have 3 or 4 credit classes. It's,
Yeah, that was a hypothetical, totally made up based off of that, like that is, and there are some majors that are kind of an odd number that way, but yes. So, so, for example, computer science, which is well over 60, sometimes 70 credits, it's not just 19. So the faculty agreed on what that half number was, whatever it was. So yeah, completely hypothetical, it's not 19 across the board, it's whatever the faculty agreed would be about half of the major. Yeah.
Right.
And so I know that we're running short for time, so do you want me to speed it up? You tell me.
No, I just want to make two comments. First, kudos to the board in setting that resolution, because not only, I think, we're showing that we're addressing the transfer issue, right? But I think that the incredible work that has been led by Wendy and Alicia and the OAA team in conjunction with the faculty as we look at this thing has uncovered a number of things that I think moving forward, we're going to be able to even drill down on things that are going to be more beneficial to the students in terms of a whole range of issues too. So I think that this effort, which has been massive, and kudos for all the work engaged, not only would it give us, I think, the most state-of-the-art transfer seamless process that we can have, but I think it's going to lead to a lot of other sort of curricular innovation. But one of the things that I'll say is, and it shouldn't be a surprise in some ways, that part of that is that if you're in the community college, right, and you were not thinking as a system. So you were generating curriculum based on the reality of your school, right? That is the task that you were given, right? So you were not this idea of the movement of students and the transferability, even though everybody sort of knew happened, was not a point of departure in the way that it has been in how this exercise has been led, which I think is a framework that we need to adopt more and more as we think about some of this. We think about some of these things. So I just think that it's been, again, incredibly exciting, a lot of hard work, but I think even better things are going to come as a result of the journey.
You have essentially covered the rest of my presentation.
No, my bad.
I appreciate that very much, though.
You all have trained me well.
So another thing that was uncovered is the difference between the AAS degree and the AS, the Applied Associate degree. What percentage, a very high percentage of students taking the Applied Associate degree, which is a terminal degree, not intended to transfer, and then being surprised that students are losing credit as a result. And this slide just shows I wanted a little shout out to all the faculty who were part of the committee. But the spring program alignment work, the completed competencies, we have them for psychology, engineering, and computer science. We're completing the course tables for accounting and business. There were some changes to the CPA exam. We wanted to wait for those to happen before making sure and that we established the competencies. And then education. Anyone has any experience on education and the millions and millions of certifications, it's a little bit complicated. So we have looped in the Dean of Education to help us with that one because it's more complicated than we thought. And the next set of majors that we're working on, public health, biology, sociology, economics, and then the liberal arts, math, history, journalism, and art. And this does not mean all of them are taking the competency approach. Why is that? A lot of these, it's very, very small. There's only one community college has this major, and maybe 2 senior colleges have the major. So we're first looking at all of the courses. We created these tables to see, do the courses already align? And there's a lot of alignment with these smaller majors. Maybe there's one course that if it transferred this way, then students would have successful seamless transfer. So those are the conversations that we're having with these majors because they are much, much smaller. I'm happy to report some of them were added to the list because faculty reached out and said, when are we next? We want our major to be part of the transfer initiative. And we said, all right, come on board, no problem. And so we have added them to the list because they wanted. And so these are the screenshots of Transfer Explorer. It's explorer.cuny.edu. If you ever want to have a little bit of fun, in my opinion, go there. My favorite new feature, leaderboards, making data public. Click on leaderboards and you can see percentage of graduates by transfer, non-transfer, at my college. How many of my recent graduates are transfer students? How many are not? You can click on your college, you can click on the major. You can see how long does transfer admission usually take. You can see how long does it take for every senior college. After the students transfer, what does their academic performance look like, to demystify a lot of the stereotypes that are sometimes associated with transfer student success or lack thereof. College residency requirements that vary from college to college, program to program, so students can make decisions. My favorite, newest one is program comparisons, the very last one. So I can click and I use an example here, accounting from Queensborough to Queens College. I am majoring in accounting at Queensborough and I'm going to transfer to Queens. I have two choices. I can do the business accounting track and I will have completed 45% of the major requirements. If I decide to go the concentration at advanced accounting, after getting a major at Queensborough, I will only have satisfied 28.57% of the major. That's really useful information to a student. It will show you how many more credits. With the competencies, we will be updating Transfer Explorer, so then that will change and the percentage will increase. But there are a lot of fun features, a lot of public data that we're making available on Transfer Explorer, a lot of great tools for the students as well. But the leaderboards is one of our newest features, and I really like that one a lot. So. Some challenges that we already kind of discussed. Yes, John.
Quick question about data.
Sure.
When I looked at this like a year and a half ago, I had asked for the Transfer Explorer data so I could actually do an analysis like you were doing, and it wasn't shared with me, and so I had to steal it by web scraping, which was harder than it could have been. But having the raw data publicly available would allow a lot of analysis to happen that you're rolling out slowly, but could have been done quite a while ago. So I don't know if there's, like on Tableau, I can get raw data pretty easily by clicking that little cylinder. Is there a way to get the raw data for Transfer Explorer so it's current? Because
We can look into it. Yeah.
I mean, we have partnership agreements and data sharing agreements too. So we have to make sure that our partners allow that at this stage of the development.
Yeah.
So,
the publicly available transfer data is not public? I mean, it's.
oh, publicly available.
Yeah, yes, it's publicly
I'm just talking
available.
about course
I think it comes from,
equivalencies.
some of it is from some of your Tableau work.
You're not referring to student level data?
No.
I'm just
Course
talking about
equivalency.
if I have Math 123 at the College of Staten Island, what are the equivalencies? And getting that graph of
Yeah, we can-
equivalencies
yeah, we
was
can
actually
share that
much
with you.
harder to get
Yep.
than I had anticipated.
We can,
Yeah.
we can have a conversation.
So some of these challenges we already discussed, but it did take a much longer time, Luby can attest, to getting faculty to respond to emails, to get them on board. Some lessons learned. Now we're in a much better place. We now know the right way to get communication with faculty, and we're working on that. But one of the biggest challenges really were faculty sometimes don't know enough about the curriculum. And even their own major, and that was a challenge. We had a few people on the committee who just didn't understand, and that proved to be a little bit more of a challenge, an unexpected challenge that we had thought. Let me see. So this was the example Wendy was kind of talking about, where sometimes the major at a community college is so large that it's over 75% of what the major would be at the senior college, and that is proving to be very problematic, and this is one example in early childhood education. The faculty aren't always provided with enough information. Curriculum is not part of the conversation across the system. So these are just some concerns that have been raised, but the positive outcomes really were the faculty and the working groups. The business working group said, I can't believe we've never been talking before. We need to be talking. One said we've been doing a disservice to our students because we're creating curriculum without talking to the senior colleges where our students are transferring. So we can create a robust curriculum, but if the purpose of the AA and the AS is to transfer, and we're not asking where are we preparing students to transfer, then we keep running into this issue. So anyways, this in a nutshell is the presentation, and there you have it. Only one slide was
Wow.
missing from this to the final.
Thank you
so we're
very much.
good.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You're very
It's great to see this. I mean, this has been an issue that has been coming up year after year, and I finally feel you have traction, and you actually have a plan, and things have happened, so kudos and congratulations. It's great. So with no more items on the agenda,
What?
Oh, sorry.
When is not to throw a curveball here, but when are we going to approach transfer credits within the four-year colleges? I go to Hunter and I want to now go to Baruch and I want to transfer my whatever costs to Baruch. Is that the next hurdle for us?
You said to stop, you said, yeah, I thought you said to stop with the good news. Look, this is a complicated monster, is what it is. So it's a step-by-step devolution. I think recognizing our community colleges exist in some cases to help facilitate and articulate transfer. That is their job. The senior colleges, that is not their mission. It is to create the four-year degree. In other words, so if you're going between senior colleges, that was a decision you made as opposed to the purpose of the existing institution. So it's a different set of problems that we'll have to attack next.
But kudos to what you're doing, and it's outstanding, and I'm sure we're all delighted at the progress.
There you go. Okay, so now with no more items on the agenda, I move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
We did end with enough.